In sport, every day, Shauna has this activity for her team, and you know what they call it? Practice. And they practice, play. Practice, okay? Now you guys who work in the corporate arena, when's the last time you had practice? Every day's game day.
Yes.
You see the problem? And we don't know how to prepare people. We don't know how to practice. And so what I've essentially tried to do with my corporate clients is create activities that essentially allow you to practice the things that you're going to need to do to successfully lead. And what's happened now is people come back to me, and I'm talking about, you know, people that are at the director level and they've got the MBAs and they've taken a bunch of leadership classes. It's the same thing. This has helped me more than anything else because of what I had to do. And that's part of what I want leaders to do, is I want them to expand their awareness and knowledge of themselves. Okay? This is when I work with golfers, the same thing. I want you to be aware of yourself. Sean's talking about a kid, that we need to help her become more aware of her body. Okay? She doesn't know what she's feeling. She's got a great mind, but she can't feel it. Okay? I want her to be aware of it, what it feels like. This will help her. Are y'all aware that there are people, if you ask them what you're feeling, they can't tell you? Now, that's not a surprise to men. It kind of is to women. Okay? Right? Don't ask a man what he's feeling. Ask him what he's thinking. I'm dead serious about this. If he wants you to know what he's feeling, he'll tell you. The word is alexithymia. It means no words for emotions. We become so cut off with our body and how we feel that we can't tell you how we feel. And every one of you have somebody in your life who has alexithymia. They can't tell you how they feel. They don't know. How would I know that? How do I feel my body? I can tell you what I'm thinking. But when you put these people in leadership positions and they have a lot of power and they're really cut off from themselves, which a lot of leaders are, that their awareness of themselves is very low, you can do a lot of damage. So that's essentially the essence of the training, is to help people get really clear about themselves and how they come across and how they affect people. And you can't get that in a book. But we have this bias. We have an education bias, right? Learn more, read more, have more knowledge, have more stuff in your head. That's how you become successful. Yes, sir.
So I've been practicing kind of what you're saying, and
Could you step over here so we can hear the question
Yeah.
when we do the video, please?
So, you know, as an entrepreneur, on any given day, I have 100 things on my to-do list.
Yep.
And something that I've consciously started doing is a completion list, because that makes me feel good about myself, because I get overwhelmed by these, you know,
Yeah.
huge list of things that I have to do.
Yeah.
But it's very hard because you grow up with a completion, you know, to-do
Yeah.
list. And it's very hard to transition to, yes, I've done these things, and it's okay to have 100 things on your to-do list, and you don't feel inadequate in some way.
Right.
And it's hard. It just pulls you right back into the to-do list, and you're worrying about those 100 things to take care of.
Well, you know, when you said that, what it made me think of, and Shauna knows this story, because we talk about it a lot, is the story of St. Francis of Assisi. What's interesting about him, he lived in the 1200s. And here's a man who essentially lived in poverty. And what history has really shown is he was the most influential person in Europe in that century, in the 13th century. And the question is, how did he do it? Okay, he influenced the most powerful, most wealthy organization of his time, the Catholic Church. And his secret to success was this: first, do the necessary. The necessary is your to-do list, is your have-to list. Okay? Then do the possible. The possible is what you're capable of doing. And he said, if you will continue to do the possible, what will happen is your perception of the impossible will change. That you do the impossible by doing what you can. You follow me? The problem is most of us just do the necessary. We just do the to-do list. We don't do what we're capable of doing. We don't do the possible. Most of us don't know what we're capable of doing. We don't know where the edge of us is. And so what I would say is don't allow the to-do list to keep you from going to your possible. What are you capable of doing? Most people do the necessary and they tell themselves they're doing the possible. Okay? You with me? Most people do the necessary. They go, I did all the things you told me to do, boss. That's the necessary. Versus the person who said, you didn't tell me to do this, but I think this will really be helpful. But if you don't create an environment where people can take risks, they won't do the possible. They'll just do the necessary. And Francis, he spent the first 2 years after his conversion, he heard God say to him, rebuild my church. He spent the next 2 years rebuilding 3 churches that had fallen down. He was just doing the necessary. People are like, what are you doing? So that would be the thing I want you to think about is what does the possible look like for you? If you did the possible, what would you do? What would you do differently? Because I bet you've mastered doing the necessary, haven't you? Has he?
Yes.
Yes, he is. You have mastered doing the necessary.
Getting there on possible.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
There you go.
So it's very scary to leave the necessary, to leave the to-do list behind and do the possible. Most golfers, they want to stand out there, okay, with the same club and the same flat great lie and hit 15 shots, right? They love doing that because they can succeed. And then I come out here and go, let's go hit one over here that's really funky and hard that you're probably going to mess up on. And you have to be willing to do that, you know. So using a golf analogy, how do you create a difficult shot for yourself? Would you go try it? Or do you just play shots that you know you can hit, right? That's what most people do because they want to succeed. But if you begin to do the possible, what's going to happen is you're going to fail more.
So failing would be akin to taking a block away then, right? And then stepping back to look at the larger construction, bigger vision entails, and then going back with a clearer perspective on how to proceed.
Well, I would say it this way. Have you ever seen a toddler learn how to walk, right? And when they first start to walk, what happens? They take a couple steps and they fall down. And then they get back up and they keep doing. All right, or a kid learning how to ride a bike. That's what I'm saying is that when you fall down, what do you then do?
Persist.
Yes. But what's interesting is why don't people persist when they fall down?
Negative self-talk.
Well, part of it is they think it's not supposed to be this way. We believe, like, we live in a culture like if you pick the right partner, the way that you'll know you've picked the right person is it'll just be great all the time. And you'll just, you know, every time you're with this person, you'll hear angels in the background singing, and it'll just be joyful. And so then the minute you have this disagreement, it's like, oh, maybe you're not the right person because we just had a disagreement. Versus what I would say is find somebody who you can fight with well, okay, without hurting each other, right? Like find somebody you can really be honest and disagree with and argue with without it being destructive. That would be a good business partner. That would be a good life partner. You know, I hear these people say, well, we have a great marriage. We never fight. I'm like, I'm sorry to hear that. You know, how can you do that? I don't know how you can do that. Or, you know, my business partner, you know, we have a great relationship because we never disagree and we never argue. Really? But what I'm just saying is that we have this belief that if you're doing it correctly, whatever it is, then you don't fail. But what I'm saying is that's the growth process. So if you look at anything like a child learning to walk or ride a bike, of course they fail. Or anytime you're trying to learn a new skill, of course you fail at it. And if you have a good instructor to say, well, you're supposed to mess up. That's part of how you learn how to do it right, by messing it up. But yes, a lot of times the stuff that we add on, you know, the more and more knowledge and data gets in the way. You know, when I see a person who they believe they have it the right way and they become really kind of dogmatic in their belief system, what happens is they lose their ability to be curious. You can see it in things like religion and politics really easily, right? That once a person quits being curious about themselves and how to do it, then I think you quit getting better, you know. people like Shauna, one of the reasons why she's been successful is she's one of the most curious people that I know. That she has every reason to say, I got this. You don't know anything that I don't know. But what I see over and over again is the best coaches that I work with, they're the most curious. The most successful coaches, the coaches that have won a lot of championships, they're the most curious. They ask questions. The folks who are getting their butt kicked and they're afraid of losing their job, they just shut down. And that's the problem with thinking that you got it the right way, is you quit being curious. Okay? The thing that you must preserve is your curiosity.
And so preserving that in others, once we're able to, find the fortitude to persist, the curiosity to fail and be okay with it, how do we engender that in those that we choose around us?
Well, if you're the leader, you let them you let them see you fail and get up. And at the same time, when they fail, you don't criticize them. A lot of people at work, if you make a mistake, you get criticized, right?
How is it communicated to where it's not a criticism, it's a building block or something that can be added for future building on top of?
Yeah. So the leader that's critical of their own failures is going to be critical of yours. Are you with me? If you as a leader allow yourself to mess up and you don't have a real critical voice with yourself, then you have a chance of being that way with other people. The problem is a lot of leaders are very critical of themselves and their failure, and they're going to be critical of yours. And what that does is that hurts performance. My daughter called me last year and she